My name is Eliza. I'm 31, and I've always believed that generosity could build stronger family bonds. But when I gave my younger sister Madison a brand new iPhone at her birthday lunch, and she rolled her eyes because it wasn't the right model, I realized just how deep her entitlement ran. The worst part, my mother agreed with her. But then what had to happen happened. Where are you watching this video from? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to. Now let me take you into the moment that changed everything for me. The sun was perfect that afternoon. Too perfect, really, for what was about to happen. We were sitting under a white pergola in my parents' backyard in San Diego, surrounded by gardenias in full bloom and guests sipping lemonade from glass jars. It should have felt like celebration. Instead, I felt the creeping weight of dread I always tried to ignore at family gatherings. "Happy birthday, Madison," I said, holding out a small wrapped box with a ribbon I'd tied myself that morning. My sister Madison, 28, influencer by ambition and in between jobs by reality, gave me a look that could cut glass. She peeled back the wrapping with slow, dramatic fingers, letting out a sigh so audible that even the birds seemed to hush. "Oh," she said flatly, lifting the iPhone from the box like it was a used napkin. "I told you I wanted the newer model." I blinked, caught off guard, then forced a smile. "This is the iPhone 14 Pro, top of the line. I thought it'd be perfect." Madison's frown deepened. "Yeah, but the 15 came out last month. This one's already old." Her words echoed in the stunned silence that followed. I felt the heat rush to my cheeks, not from the sun, but from the eyes I knew were on me. I glanced toward my mother, hoping, just hoping, for a raised eyebrow, a gentle nudge toward gratitude. But she only sipped her drink, then said with a shrug, "Eliza, you should have been more attentive to what Madison wanted. You know how particular she is." And just like that, the laughter resumed. My father clinked glasses with Uncle Ron, my cousins resumed chatting about Madison's upcoming brand collab, and my mother reached for a canapé like nothing happened. I stared at the box in Madison's hands, now abandoned on the table. My heart was pounding in that familiar way, like I was 8 years old again, being scolded for upsetting Madison because I didn't let her borrow my favorite dress. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I smiled, or something close to it. That's what I've always done: smile, keep the peace, and be the sister who gives. But something in me cracked just a little right then. Maybe it was the memory of that same Madison forgetting my birthday last year and handing me a lumpy clay figurine she made in pottery class and didn't even bother to wrap. Maybe it was the echo of all the subscription fees I'd paid silently for her for years. Or maybe it was realizing that my own mother, who I had desperately hoped would see me, had chosen to side with the sister who just humiliated me. I fiddled with my napkin, trying to tune out the conversation, but Madison's voice carried, as always. "Anyway, I'll just sell it online and put it toward the upgrade. I guess it's better than nothing." Better than nothing. The words hit like a slap. I caught my breath and stared at my lap. I couldn't look at anyone, not Madison, not my mother, not the aunt now whispering to her friend like I'd just committed some social faux pas. The taste of lemonade turned sour in my mouth. That's when I knew something had to change. But in that moment, I just sat there, silent as the wind rustled the gardenias, pretending I wasn't breaking inside. That night I sat cross-legged on my couch, surrounded by the soft glow of string lights I'd hung months ago for ambience, though I rarely noticed them anymore. The apartment was quiet, the kind of silence that makes you hear things you wish you hadn't buried. I had the little clay figurine in my hands again. Madison gave it to me last year, her version of a personalized birthday gift. A misshapen cat, maybe? Or was it supposed to be a squirrel? She'd handed it to me with a laugh, saying, "It's kind of a joke gift, but I didn't have time to get you something real." Back then, I'd smiled, said thank you, placed it on my shelf like it meant something. But tonight, under the soft lamplight, it looked more like an emblem of every time I'd been made small to make her feel bigger. I turned it over, tracing the uneven grooves. Was I really surprised by today's scene? Madison's entitlement wasn't new, and truthfully, neither was Mom's reaction. But something about that moment, being dismissed so casually, so publicly, shook me in a way I hadn't expected. I opened my laptop not to scroll aimlessly like usual, but with a purpose I couldn't quite name yet. My fingers hovered uncertain before I typed. "Apple account charges last 12 months. There it was. The monthly charges for Madison's Spotify Premium, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and even her fitness app subscription, all tied to my card. I scrolled through the list, my stomach tightening with each line. There was even a makeup subscription box charge, $39.95, recurring for the past year. I didn't wear makeup. The worst part, I never said no. Not once. I'd convinced myself it was easier to just cover it. She's still figuring things out, I'd tell myself. Pay me back someday. That someday never came. I leaned back on the couch, clutching a pillow to my chest. Why had I let it go on this long? It wasn't just the money. It was the feeling that my needs, my effort, my boundaries, they didn't count. Not in this family. I thought back to when we were kids. Madison was always the loud one, the needy one, the one who just couldn't help it. And me, I was the good girl, the responsible sister, the one who cleaned up, who smoothed things over, who gave. Always gave. That dynamic hadn't changed. Only now the stakes were higher and the giving never stopped. I got up, walked to my bookshelf, and pulled down a photo album. The kind with yellowed pages and those sticky plastic overlays. I hadn't looked at it in years. There was a picture of us at Disneyland, Madison in her princess costume, beaming, and me behind her, holding the bags. Another of her at her high school graduation, and I remembered how I'd driven 6 hours to be there, only to be told, "Oh good, you can take the photos." A tear slipped down my cheek before I could catch it. This wasn't just about today's birthday lunch. It was about the years I'd spent trying to be enough to earn their thanks, their recognition, maybe just a little respect. I closed the album, the weight of it heavy in my lap. No more, I thought. Not like this. I stood, carried the clay figurine to my bedroom, and tucked it into a drawer. Out of sight, out of mind. Back at my laptop, I opened a spreadsheet. If I was going to reclaim my life, I needed to know exactly what I'd given up. Line by line, I listed each subscription, each payment, each favor I'd done for Madison. The numbers added up faster than I expected, each total like a small betrayal I'd committed against myself. Somewhere between the streaming services and makeup boxes, I felt something shift inside me, not rage exactly, more like clarity. A cold, precise clarity. This wasn't love, it was obligation. Conditioned, expected, and never reciprocated. I saved the file and closed the laptop. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from resolve. I walked to the mirror, studied the tired lines around my eyes, the way my smile rarely reached them anymore. "Eliza," I whispered, as if speaking to the version of me that kept silent at that lunch, "you're allowed to stop." And for the first time in years, I believed it. The next morning, I woke with that same heavy feeling in my chest. Not quite dread, but something close. I stared at the ceiling, wondering when I stopped waking up excited for the day. Maybe around the time Madison first asked to borrow money from our sister's savings account and never paid it back. Sister's savings. I almost laughed. Years ago, when I was 24 and Madison had just turned 21, I'd suggested we start a shared savings account. For trips, emergencies, future plans. I'd said, ever the planner, ever the sister who wanted to build something meaningful together. Madison had agreed, of course, bubbling with excitement. Let's save for Europe, or maybe a business someday. But the savings had become a silent drain. Over the years, I'd contributed regularly, she sporadically. And we never, ever discussed withdrawals. Until now, I poured myself coffee, hands trembling slightly as I reached for the stack of papers on the table, my printed bank statements, the ones I'd finally worked up the nerve to examine. Line after line, I traced the debits with a highlighter. Small ones at first. $45.32 to a boutique, $79 to a concert ticket vendor, $23.50 to a salon. Some were larger, $212, $90 for something labeled Glow Retreat. I stared at that one for a long time, trying to recall if I'd ever gone to a retreat. I hadn't. Then came the bigger shock. Two $500 withdrawals spaced 3 months apart. No explanation, no heads up. Nothing. My throat tightened. I flipped to the next page. Another $400, this time right before Madison's birthday last year. And suddenly I remembered. She had posted about treating herself to a weekend spa trip. I'd liked the photo back then, thinking, good for her. She'd treated herself. With my money. A low, hollow ache settled in my chest, somewhere between anger and heartbreak. How many times had I told myself it didn't matter? That family meant sharing, being generous, not keeping score. But this wasn't sharing. It was stealing in slow motion, wrapped in the language of love and "you're such a good sister." I kept flipping through the pages, heart sinking with each total. By the time I reached the end, the number stared back at me like a slap. $3,847.22. Gone. I leaned back, breath shaky. Nearly $4,000 siphoned from a shared account without a word. The worst part? I hadn't noticed. Or maybe I had and chose not to see. I thought about all the times Madison had joked, "You're basically my financial advisor," or "Thank God you're the responsible one." At the time, I'd smiled, flattered by the trust. Now those words felt like chains. I stared at the stack of statements, suddenly aware of how quiet my apartment was. No TV, no music. Just the sound of my own breathing, ragged and shallow. I stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the San Diego skyline. Below, the city moved on cars, buses, people with places to be. And here I was standing still, trying to reconcile love with betrayal. My phone buzzed, a text from Madison. "Madison, hey, can you cover the Wi-Fi again this month? Mine's late." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I sat back down, opened my laptop, and typed, "How to remove someone from a joint account." Step by step, the search results laid it out. Forms to fill, ID to present, bank visits. It was all doable. I just had to decide. I looked again at the total $3,847.22 and felt something shift inside me. A quiet, determined click, like a door I hadn't realized was unlocked, swinging open. This wasn't just about money. It was about boundaries I'd never set, about a voice I'd long silenced. And I was done being quiet. I reached for my phone, not to text Madison back, but to call my bank. The next morning, I woke up with one clear thought. Today, I take it back. I got dressed carefully, nothing fancy, but deliberate. A soft blue blouse I hadn't worn in months, dark jeans, and the small silver pendant I'd bought myself years ago after landing my first freelance design client. A little reminder that I could build something of my own. As I walked into the bank, my heart pounded so loud I was sure the receptionist could hear it. But I smiled anyway. "Hi, I need to speak with someone about a joint account," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The banker led me to her desk, a woman about my age named Vanessa, which was a strange coincidence. She wore a crisp blazer and warm smile, and for a moment I hesitated. What if she asked why I wanted to remove my sister? What if I couldn't explain it without sounding cold? But Vanessa simply asked, "Can I see your ID, please?" I handed it over with slightly shaking hands. She clicked away at her computer for a moment, then looked up. "This account has two owners, Eliza and Madison. You want to remove Madison from access, correct?" "Yes," I said firmly, surprising even myself. She nodded, professional but not cold. "We'll need to close the joint account and transfer the funds to a new one under your name. It'll take a few minutes." I nodded, watching as she worked. Each click of the keyboard felt like a small nail in the coffin of the old dynamic, of the version of me who said yes to everything, who let family excuse every boundary crossed. Vanessa looked up again. "Do you want to restrict any future access to the account? We can set alerts for any attempt to link or log in." I hesitated for a moment. Then, "Yes, please, no access." As she finalized the process, she glanced at me with a kind smile. "If it helps, you're not the first person to do this. Setting boundaries with family is hard, but you'd be surprised how many people come in here trying to clean up after someone else's mess." That almost broke me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered, "Thank you." Within 20 minutes, it was done. I left the bank clutching the new debit card in my hand, not because I needed to use it, but because it felt symbolic. A small, plastic emblem of something I hadn't felt in years. Control. The sun was warm on my skin as I walked down the sidewalk. I didn't rush. I didn't check my phone. I just walked. It was strange, the lightness I felt. Not euphoric, not yet. But like taking off a coat you forgot you were wearing, heavy, suffocating. And suddenly you can breathe again. I passed a coffee shop and almost kept walking, then doubled back. For once, I wasn't in a hurry. I ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window, watching people pass. And that's when it hit me, this was mine. This moment, this peace, this clarity, it belonged to me, not borrowed or stolen or dimmed by someone else's needs. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. "Madison. Hey, I tried to log into our account and it's not working. Did the app glitch or something?" I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't owe her an explanation, not anymore. I took a sip of my cappuccino, the foam rich and warm, and let the silence stretch. That afternoon, I opened a fresh document on my laptop. Not a financial record this time, but a list. Things I will no longer apologize for, saying no without explanation, expecting gratitude when I give, wanting respect, not just love, putting my own peace first. I stared at the list, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. It was short, simple, but it felt like the beginning of something real. I wasn't just closing an account. I was opening a door to a different way of living, to a version of myself who didn't shrink to fit the family mold. And for the first time, I wasn't scared of what came next. That evening, I couldn't avoid it anymore. I needed to talk to someone who actually knew me, someone who hadn't spent years looking through me like I was the family ATM, someone who wouldn't dismiss my exhaustion as being dramatic. So I called Sonia. Sonia and I met our freshman year of college during an early morning graphic design class we both hated. While everyone else groaned through critiques, we bonded over sarcasm, late-night ramen, and mutual dreams of creating something beautiful and leaving dysfunctional families behind. "Hey, stranger," she answered, her voice warm, familiar. "I saw Madison's latest selfie haul. Another spa day." I laughed, though it came out more like a sigh. "Oh, you have no idea. Got time for a long story. For you, always. Spill." Within minutes, we were sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by Chinese takeout containers and a bottle of wine we both knew we wouldn't finish. I told her everything. The iPhone debacle, the joint account betrayal, the subscriptions, the garden party humiliation, every moment that had chipped away at my sense of self over the years, until finally I couldn't pretend anymore. Sonia didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp in outrage or offer platitudes. She just listened, her eyes locked on mine, nodding slowly with every word. When I finally ran out of steam, she leaned back against the couch, her voice low and even. "They don't see you as a person, Eliza. You're a wallet." That sentence hit me like a punch, blunt, unfiltered, and true. I felt tears spring to my eyes, uninvited but insistent. "I've thought that," I whispered, "but I didn't want to believe it." Sonia scooted closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "It's hard to admit when the people who are supposed to love you only love what you can do for them." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. "It's not just the money, it's everything, the way Mom looks at me like I owe her, the way Madison acts like I'm the backup dancer in her solo act, like I don't exist unless I'm giving." Sonia pulled me into a hug, tight and grounding. "I see you," she said softly. "I see how hard you've worked, how much you give. And I see how exhausted you are." The dam broke. I cried, not delicate movie tears, but the kind that shake your whole body. Years of silence, of swallowing pain, of convincing myself that love meant giving until there was nothing left, poured out in ragged sobs. Sonia didn't say a word. She just held me, her grip steady, her presence solid. When the tears finally slowed, I felt lighter. Not healed, not fixed, but lighter. "I didn't realize how tired I was," I whispered. "Not just from them. From always pretending it's fine, that I'm fine." "You don't have to be fine anymore," she said. "You're allowed to be angry, sad, done." I wiped my face with a sleeve, letting out a shaky breath. "I feel like a terrible daughter, a terrible sister." Sonia shook her head. "No, you've been a good daughter and sister. That's the problem. You've been so good for so long to people who never deserved that version of you." Her words sank in slowly, like sunlight after a storm. I sat in silence for a long time, watching the city lights flicker outside my window. Finally, I turned to her. "What if I stop being the good one? What if I stop saying yes?" Sonia grinned. "Then maybe you finally get to be you, not the version they want, the real Eliza." I let the thought settle. It felt foreign, radical, freeing. That night, as I crawled into bed, I stared at the ceiling in the dark. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. I felt seen. Not by my mother, not by Madison. By me. The first text came at 8:07 a.m. "Madison, hey, weird issue with the bank app. Can't get into our account. You know anything about that?" I stared at my phone from across the room, sipping coffee. I didn't rush to pick it up. My heart fluttered, sure, but this time I didn't feel cornered. I felt prepared. She didn't wait for a reply. 8:09 a.m. tried again. Still not working. It says the account's closed. 8:10 a.m. Eliza, seriously, what's going on? Still, I didn't answer. Instead, I turned off notifications. One small button that gave me the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. But my brief peace shattered 5 minutes later when my phone lit up again, this time with a voicemail from Mom. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. Eliza, I just got off the phone with Madison. She's very upset. She can't access the shared account and says you've removed her. What's going on, sweetheart? That account was for both of you, and frankly, I think it was incredibly selfish to make a change like that without speaking to the family first. You've really hurt us with this. Her tone wasn't angry. It was wounded, like I'd burned down the family home instead of quietly protecting my finances. My chest tightened, but then something inside me pushed back. Hard. Hurt the family. I whispered it aloud, the words so absurd I almost laughed. They weren't angry about the money, they were angry about control, because I'd stopped being the reliable giver, the one they could count on to fix everything, smooth everything over, and quietly swallow resentment with a polite smile. No more. I set the phone face down and let the message hang in the air like a ghost. I didn't delete it. I wanted to remember how it felt, the moment my family's love turned transactional. By noon, I had 7 missed calls. Madison again. Then Mom. Even one from my aunt, no doubt roped into the Eliza is being unreasonable campaign. I didn't answer. Instead, I cleaned my apartment. Not because it was messy, but because I needed the ritual, the reclaiming of space. As I dusted shelves and folded blankets, I felt a strange energy, anger and freedom dancing together. In the corner of my living room sat a box of old gifts, trinkets from family birthdays and holidays. I pulled it out, one item at a time. A scarf from Madison, tag still attached. A cookbook from Mom with a note inside. Now you can cook something decent. I ran my hand over the pages, heart heavy but steady. These weren't tokens of love. They were placeholders, obligations met but rarely thoughtful. I packed the box tighter, sealed it shut, and carried it to the closet. Not to discard just yet, but to store. To remind myself what it looked like to keep score the way they always had. At 3:00 p.m. the next message came. A long one. Madison, I seriously don't get why you're acting like this. We're family. You can't just cut me off financially without even telling me. Do you know how stressful this is? I have bills to pay. I can't believe you'd be so cold. After everything I've done for you. I read it 3 times, then whispered the words aloud, incredulous. Everything she's done for me. I tried to recall a time Madison had put me first. A birthday gift that wasn't an afterthought. A favor that didn't come with strings. Support in any form when I needed it. Nothing came to mind, because it wasn't about mutual care. It was about convenience mine. And now that convenience was gone. By evening, my silence must have driven them desperate. My mother's second voice message had a new tone, urgency. Eliza, please call us. Your sister's in tears. She doesn't understand why you're doing this. I'm trying to keep the peace, but you're making it very difficult. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't like you. You've always been the generous one. The good daughter, don't throw that away. The generous one, the good daughter, the roles they'd written for me like a script. I realized something chilling: they didn't love me. They loved what I gave, my time, my money, my silence. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my notebook. Not the spreadsheet, this time I needed to write something else. What I've given without thanks. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify $62 month every month. For years, sister savings, account contributions $200 month for 5 years, Madison's concert ticket. Emergency. $150 Mom's birthday dinner. When she forgot her wallet. $300 groceries for family barbecue, $280 spa gift cards. Birthday gifts. Tech upgrades over $2,000. I stared at the total, then scribbled underneath it. They didn't even say thank you. That was the truth. The part I hadn't admitted until now. I didn't need repayment. I needed respect, recognition, acknowledgement that I mattered. Instead, I got guilt, manipulation, silence until I said no. The next text from Madison was shorter. Madison, whatever, do what you want. Just remember this is on you. And for the first time, I didn't flinch because she was right. This was on me. I chose to open my eyes. I chose to stop enabling. I chose myself. Saturday morning started with an unexpected knock. I peeked through the peephole and froze. Dad. He stood on my doorstep, dressed in his usual weekend attire, khakis, polo, and that calm, placating look he always wore when mediating family disagreements. Beside him, Madison, arms crossed, sunglasses perched dramatically on her head, radiating sulk. I opened the door just enough to speak. Hi, what's going on? Dad raised his hands in a peace-offering gesture. Eliza, we just want to talk. No drama. Your mother thought it would help if we sat down face to face. I hesitated, every cell in my body screaming, don't let them in. But part of me needed this, needed to say aloud what had festered in silence for too long. Fine, I said, stepping aside. We'll talk, in the backyard. We sat at my patio table under a string of fairy lights I hadn't bothered turning off. The sunlight was too bright, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and tension. Madison went first. I don't get why you're making such a big deal out of this, she said, flopping into a chair like it physically pained her to be here. It's not like I was stealing, it was our shared account. You didn't have to contribute if you didn't want to. I folded my hands on the table. Madison, you withdrew almost $4,000 without ever discussing it with me. That's not sharing, that's taking. She rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. I needed that money for essentials. Rent, groceries, gas. I raised an eyebrow. And the $500 spa weekend. The concert tickets, the boutique shopping. Madison looked to Dad, clearly expecting backup. He cleared his throat. Eliza, I understand you feel taken advantage of, he began, voice gentle, diplomatic. But we're a family. Families help each other. You've always been the dependable one, and that's something we admire. We just don't want this to cause a permanent rift. There it was, the subtle manipulation wrapped in compliments. I knew this script. I'd lived it for years. I'm not cutting off family, I said, voice steady. I'm setting boundaries, and if those boundaries feel like betrayal, maybe we need to look at why. Madison scoffed. You always think you're so superior just because you've got your little freelance job and your fancy apartment. I cut her off. This isn't about superiority, it's about respect, which I've given and not received. Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, what do you want? An apology, reimbursement? Just tell us what'll fix this. I stared at him. For a moment, I almost said it. Almost gave him a number, a solution to make this go away. But that's not what I needed. I want to be seen as more than a wallet, I said quietly. I want you both to acknowledge how one-sided this relationship has been. I've given, and the moment I stopped, suddenly I'm the villain. Madison's face flushed. You are acting like a villain. You humiliated me. I had to explain to my landlord why my rent check bounced because you locked me out of the account. I blinked. You never told me you were using our joint account to pay your rent. You never asked. It's not about asking, she snapped. You knew I was struggling, and you assumed I'd fix it. Silence. I turned to Dad. You want to know what I want? I want to be treated like a person, not a resource. I want accountability. And I want Madison to get her own bank account, her own subscriptions, her own sense of responsibility. Dad looked at Madison, then back at me. That's reasonable. Madison exploded. What? You're siding with her after everything? I'm not siding with anyone, he said tiredly. But Eliza's right. This has gone too far. For once, he wasn't placating her. And I saw it, just a flicker, but it was there. A shift. No yelling, no tears, just clarity. I stood. This isn't about punishing you, Madison. It's about me finally choosing me. I won't apologize for that. She stood too, shaking her head. Whatever, I don't need your help anyway. She stormed off through the gate, slamming it behind her. Dad lingered. Thank you for saying what needed to be said, he murmured. We'll figure it out. I already have, I replied. And I had. I should have known Madison wouldn't let it go. For 2 days after the backyard confrontation, I didn't hear from her or my parents. The silence felt strange, not peaceful exactly, but suspended, like standing in the eye of a storm, waiting for the winds to return. It came back on a Wednesday morning, loud, public, and ugly. I was scrolling through Instagram while sipping my coffee when I saw it. A blurry photo of Madison, eyes red, in what looked like her bedroom. The caption hit like a punch to the gut. Sometimes the people closest to you hurt you the most. When your own family decides you're not worth helping, you learn the hard way who really cares. Cut off familydrama sampi plechin. My stomach dropped. Within minutes, the comments rolled in. OMG, what happened? Wait, is this about your sister? That's so cold. Families are supposed to support each other. Cutting someone off financially, harsh. I scrolled faster, heart racing. Was she really doing this? Turning me into the villain online, feeding followers half-truths to win sympathy. Then came the real gut punch, a text from my Aunt Lisa. Aunt Lisa. Hey, sweetie, just saw Madison's post. What's really going on? I thought you girls were close. I froze. Madison hadn't just hinted at me, she was painting a full picture, one in which I was the cold-hearted sister who abandoned her in a time of need. And our extended family, most of whom I rarely spoke to, were eating it up. The worst part, I knew this game. I'd seen Madison play it before, twisting facts, bending stories to make herself the victim. But this time I was the target. I didn't respond to my aunt. I couldn't, not yet. Instead, I opened my messages. Dozens of notifications, comments, DMs. I stared at my phone, numb. This wasn't just personal, it was public. And for the first time, I understood something deeply unsettling. Madison didn't just feel entitled to my money. She felt entitled to my reputation. If she couldn't control me financially, she'd control how others saw me. The realization sank into my bones. I stood pacing my apartment, mind spinning. Should I call her? Post my own version of events, set the record straight? But as I reached for my phone, another thought stopped me cold. What if defending myself meant nothing to the people already convinced I was in the wrong? I sat down, heart pounding. My whole life, I'd been the good one, the dependable sister, the silent supporter. I never needed to defend myself before, because I never believed my family would turn on me. Now I saw the truth. I'd been the convenient one, the easy one to guilt. And when I stopped being easy, I became disposable. Tears welled up not from guilt, but from something deeper. Grief. Grief for the image I had clung to, the belief that deep down they cared. Maybe they did, but only on their terms. I opened my messages again. My finger hovered over my aunt's text. I typed, then deleted. Typed again. Finally, I sent. There's a lot more to this than what Madison posted. I've set boundaries to protect myself, and that doesn't make me the bad guy. Hope you can understand. No defense. No detailed list of receipts or proof, just truth. The phone stayed silent for hours. That afternoon, I met Sonia at our favorite coffee shop. She took one look at me and said, "She posted, didn't she?" I nodded, sliding my phone across the table. She scrolled, eyebrows lifting. She's really leaning into the victim role. I know. Sonia set the phone down, face serious. Do you want to respond publicly? I shook my head. I don't know, I don't want to play her game. She nodded slowly. Then don't. Let people think what they want. The ones who matter will see the truth eventually. It sounded good. It sounded mature. But it didn't make the ache in my chest go away. As we sipped coffee, I realized something else. This wasn't just about Madison. It was about me. About how much of my self-worth I'd wrapped in other people's approval. How deeply I'd feared being seen as selfish when all I'd ever been was self-sacrificing. Now people might think I was cold, uncaring, harsh, and I had to live with that. I left the coffee shop feeling heavier but also clear. Madison could spin her story, but I wouldn't live mine in response to hers. I deleted Instagram that night. Not forever, but long enough. Long enough to stop refreshing Madison's profile, reading every snide caption, every sympathetic comment, and wondering if I should set the record straight. I didn't want to live in reaction anymore. I wanted to live for me. It wasn't easy. For days, I felt unmoored like a boat cut from the dock. I kept reaching for my phone by habit, catching myself before I opened the app that no longer existed. The silence was unnerving, but slowly it became a kind of peace. With no social media drama pulling at my attention, I could finally breathe. The first thing I did, schedule a therapy session. I'd always told myself I didn't need it, that my problems weren't big enough to justify talking to a stranger. But now I saw it for what it was, another way I'd denied myself care. The therapist's office was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and a wall of plants that made the room feel alive. I sat on the couch, knees pulled up, and for the first time told my story without minimizing it. I talked about Madison, about the joint account, about the constant guilt, the expectation that I'd be the one to give in because I was the mature one. I talked about my mother's silence, the way she always defended Madison, always found a way to blame me when I finally reached my limit. And I talked about the betrayal of seeing my family choose comfort over truth. The therapist listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush to diagnose. When I finally stopped talking, she said one simple thing. "Eliza, you've been surviving. Now it's time to start living." Those words stayed with me. For the next few weeks, I poured my energy into my freelance design business, something I'd always loved but never fully prioritized. Between client calls and creative projects, I started to feel something unfamiliar: freedom. Not just freedom from financial burden, but freedom from emotional labor. I didn't have to text Madison back. I didn't have to defend my choices. I didn't have to show up to family dinners where I left feeling drained and small. Instead, I reclaimed my time. I took morning walks along the beach, the sound of waves replacing the noise of guilt and expectation. I reconnected with old friends, the kind who asked how I was doing, not what I could do for them. And for the first time, I allowed myself to enjoy solitude, not as loneliness, but as ownership. One evening, while organizing my desk, I came across a small envelope, unopened mail from months ago. I almost tossed it aside, but something made me pause. Inside was a card, a thank you note from a past client, handwritten and thoughtful. Eliza, your designs brought our brand to life. You listened, cared, and went above and beyond. We're so grateful. I read it twice, eyes stinging. Gratitude. Recognition, not for what I gave without question, but for what I chose to give. I pinned it to my bulletin board. A new mantra echoed in my mind: I choose, I give when I want, and I say no when I need. My phone buzzed that night, Dad again. I hesitated, then let it ring. The message came a minute later. Dad. Just checking in. Madison's still upset, but I want to make sure you're okay. We miss you at Sunday dinners. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, I'm healing, I'm taking space. I hope you can respect that. No explanation, no apology, just truth. He didn't respond, but I felt lighter. For the first time, my life wasn't being hijacked by other people's needs. I wasn't the good daughter or the responsible sister. I was Eliza, whole, worthy, free. The invitation came in the form of a text from Dad. Dad, dinner, just you and me, no pressure, I'd like to talk. I stared at the screen for a full minute before responding. A few weeks ago, I might have felt dread, anticipating another plea to make peace with Madison, another subtle push to smooth things over for the sake of family harmony. But now, I felt something else. Curiosity. So I agreed. We met at a quiet Italian place tucked into a corner of downtown San Diego neutral ground. Not the family house, not my apartment. Just a table for two by a window, a flickering candle between us, and the low hum of other diners murmuring about everything but family drama. Dad smiled as I sat down. Thanks for coming, I nodded. Thanks for asking. The waiter brought water, menus, and silence. I broke it. So, what's on your mind? He sighed, folding his hands on the table in that way he always did when preparing for a serious talk. I've been thinking a lot, he began, voice steady, about everything that's happened. About you, Madison, your mother. I waited. I won't pretend to understand all of it, he admitted. I think for a long time we relied on you to be the glue, the one who kept things together no matter what, and I'm realizing now that wasn't fair. Something flickered in my chest, part surprise, part wariness. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But, he smiled, rueful. There's always a but, isn't there? He leaned forward. Madison's struggling. She's looking for part-time work, but you know her. She's never had to do this before. She's flailing. I stayed quiet. I wasn't about to rescue her again, not even verbally. He continued. What I'm proposing is a middle ground. She works, earns her own money, and you, if you choose, can decide what kind of help you're willing to offer. Not obligations, not demands, just support if it feels right. I stared at him. It wasn't the guilt trip I expected. It wasn't be the bigger person or you're hurting the family. It was a proposal, one with terms I could shape. I'll think about it, I said, but there's something I need first. He raised an eyebrow. What's that? Accountability. Madison has never admitted what she did was wrong. She's never apologized. Not for the money, not for the lies, not for smearing me online. If I'm going to even consider helping her in the future, it starts with her owning that. He nodded slowly. That's fair. And, I added, she earns her way forward. No more taking, no more expecting. He sighed. I don't know if she's ready for that. Then she's not ready for help. The waiter returned, we ordered, and for a while we ate in silence, the weight of unspoken truths resting lightly between us. Just as I thought the conversation was over, Dad spoke again. Your mother's been quiet through all this. You've probably noticed. I nodded. She's trying to protect Madison, always has. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's habit. But I think she's beginning to see it, too, that we haven't been fair to you. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to ask why it had taken this long, why they let it go on so long. But I already knew, because it was easier. Easier to rely on me. Easier to silence the child who never demanded, never pushed back. But now I was pushing back. And the family system didn't know what to do with that. I'm not trying to punish anyone, I said softly. I just want peace and respect. You deserve both, he said. I believed him, not because he said it, but because I finally believed it myself. We paid the bill, hugged goodbye, and as I walked home through the cool San Diego night, I felt something unfamiliar. Not triumph, not closure, just balance. For the first time, I was standing on level ground. It didn't end with a fight, no yelling, no final dramatic confrontation, just stillness. A kind of stillness that happens after a storm has passed. Not because everything is fixed, but because there's nothing left to destroy. It had been 3 weeks since that quiet dinner with Dad, where for the first time I set the terms. 3 weeks since I'd heard from Madison. And in that time, the silence was not peace, it was waiting, until the phone rang. Dad again. She's ready to talk, he said. Really talk. She's been working for a few weeks now, and I think reality is finally catching up with her. I didn't respond right away. I let the words sit there. Finally, I said, okay, but I'm not coming to the house. He agreed instantly. We met at a public park on a Saturday afternoon, neutral, open, safe. The sun was out, but the breeze kept the air cool. I arrived early, sat on a bench, and watched families walk their dogs, couples hold hands, children climb jungle gyms. Life, ordinary and untouched by betrayal, went on. Madison arrived with Dad. She looked different, tired. No designer bag, no flashy outfit. Just jeans, sneakers, and a plain jacket. Her hair pulled back, her posture smaller. For once, she wasn't performing. We sat on a picnic bench, no distractions, no audience. Madison cleared her throat. I wanted to do this face to face. I nodded but said nothing. I've been working at the store for 3 weeks, she continued. It's not glamorous, my feet hurt, my manager is a jerk, but I'm doing it. I watched her, trying to read between the lines, looking for the manipulation. But all I saw was exhaustion. Real exhaustion, the kind you feel when the easy path disappears. I'm not looking for pity, she said quickly. I just wanted to tell you I needed to say it. I waited. Then she pulled something from her bag, an envelope. I saved what I could from my first 2 paychecks. It's not much, but it's a start. I took the envelope, fingers stiff. Inside, $300 in cash, small bills, carefully folded. She was giving back what she took. I didn't come here to fight, Madison, I said quietly. But I need you to hear this. She looked up, eyes tired but open. You didn't just take money, you took advantage. You made me the bad guy when I stopped giving, and you dragged our family into it like I was the villain. Her lip quivered, but I kept going. I spent years paying for your comfort, and when I stopped, I saw the truth, how conditional everything was. Madison's voice cracked. I didn't know how to stop expecting it. You've always been the strong one, the one who had it together. That doesn't mean I didn't hurt, I said. I just hid it. She looked down. I'm sorry for all of it. I believed her, but forgiveness wasn't a switch. It was a door I could choose to unlock slowly. Dad spoke next, his voice low. You've both changed, that matters. I turned to him. Mom hasn't called, not once. He nodded grimly. She's struggling. She's not used to facing her part in this. That's not my job anymore, I said. He nodded again. We sat there in the middle of a park, 3 people trying to stitch together what had unraveled. I stood. I'm glad you're working, Madison, keep it up. But from now on, we're sisters, not business partners, not dependents, just sisters. Madison stood too. I'll prove it, not with words. I left with the envelope in my pocket, but more than that, I left with myself intact. And that was worth more than $300. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail. From Mom. Inside, a note in her careful handwriting. Eliza, I've been silent because I didn't know what to say. I watched you break, and I pretended it wasn't happening. I protected your sister, not because she deserved it, but because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to hear me say it. Mom, I read it 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. But for the first time, I believed she saw me. Maybe not fully, maybe not in every way I needed, but it was a start. 2 months later, I walked past the store where Madison worked. Through the window, I saw her folding shirts, greeting customers, standing on her own. She didn't see me. And I didn't go in because I didn't need to. She was no longer a weight around my neck. She was her own person now, for better or worse. And I was free. Free from being the family's fixer, free from guilt-drenched expectations. Free to spend my money, time, and energy on me, my work, my joy, my peace. I went home, lit a candle, and pulled out a notebook. On the first page, I wrote, I am not a wallet. I am not responsible for anyone's comfort but my own. I choose who I give to. I choose peace. I choose me. And for the first time in my life, those words felt true. Not because anyone gave me permission, but because I gave it to myself.